Sometime back, me and a couple friends came up with a brilliant idea. We thought, what if we go to several fried chicken establishments, we each order a tender from said establishment, and we will rate them all in the course of one day. This idea would then go on to become the juiciest meat competition. So we chose some restaurants, we made a lovely ratings board, graphic design is our passion, we piled up in one car and set out on our way. I packed my new 2DS XL, applied some beard oil for my glorious neck beard, and set out. There were 6 of us, including me, so 6 chicken places were chosen. Some are fast food, others are more franchises per se, and one is just a little hole-in-the-wall chicken place. Just to disclose, we are not involving sauces in the ratings. A good tender doesn't need sauce to be good. Also, any fries as well as other sides are not being counted either. This is purely just tenders and tenders alone. The first stop was KFC. We pulled up and ordered a 5-piece and a 3-piece. Supposedly, it was less than an 8-piece and still gave us 2 extra tenders. Why we needed 2 extra, I don't know. I forgot to take a picture of the tender itself, so here's an image on screen. I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5. It was a solid tender, I felt. While it wasn't exactly amazing, it did turn out to be a lot better than I thought it was going to be. The rest of my friends felt similarly, and our score just averaged out to 3.25 out of 5. We finished the fries, but unfortunately the mac and cheese got thrown away. Or maybe that's a good thing. I'll probably never know. The next stop was Dave's Hot Chicken. I played some Super Mario 3D Land while we drove, and there was huge traffic because it was the Burbank Empire Center after all. But we got there. We were off to a good start with KFC, so I had high hopes for Dave's. We placed an online order and the food came pretty fast. Faster than we thought. Here's a shot of the tender, and while taking a bite, I gave it a 4 out of 5. It had a good crunch to it, and you could probably tell it had some good strong flavors too. The group somewhat agreed, as when we averaged out the scores, it went down to 3 out of 5. Still a good rating though. I just realized that means my friends liked KFC more than Dave's, which does not add up in my opinion. Shout out to one of my friends who didn't want to waste the pickle slices and bread, so they regrettably made them into sandwiches and just ate them. Thank you for not wasting. On to Wingstop, and while we drove, I played some Skyblock on 2DS. Now, believe it or not, one of my friends actually works at Wingstop, but I assure you this review is not going to be biased. Speculation was high, but when our order came through, I was pleasantly surprised with the quality of the tender. It tasted good enough, but I also distinctly remember it being more crunchy than I thought it was going to be, which was a very nice and welcome touch. I initially gave it a 3 out of 5, but I ended up changing my score to a 3.5 out of 5. The crunch really sold it that much more for me, and again, to restate, it subverted everyone's expectations, which resulted in an average group score of 3.5 out of 5. Also, they threw in some extra tenders on accident, not that we were complaining. As you may have seen from earlier, Popeyes is up ahead on the list. What we forgot to account for was the fact that there was a Popeyes literally walking distance from Wingstop that was all just forgotten about. We planned to go to a different Popeyes that was closer to Chick-Fil-A, but pretty far from where we currently were. So seeing this one was pretty funny, but we ultimately decided to skip it and continue with the initial plan, which meant going to the faraway Popeyes. Seeing as things were going relatively well, I had some good hopes for Raising Cane's, but those hopes were not met. I gave Raising Cane's tender a 2.5 out of 5. I was very disappointed. The tender was just bland and not great in terms of taste. I don't remember it having a good crunch to it either. All in all, it was just very forgettable and boring. Normally, I like Raising Cane's, but that's because I eat the tenders usually with the sauce. However, when they're alone by themselves, they leave a lot to be desired. It's really too bad, but I stand firm with my 2.5 out of 5. The group felt similarly, and all our scores averaged out to 2.6. This was the worst so far. Also, not to mention, they for some reason gave us an entire box just for one singular tender. Why they didn't put it in the main box, I'll never know. Albeit, to be fair, it did give us a pretty good laugh. I'll definitely still eat Cane's from time to time, but I'll only do so with the sauce. To restate, the tender was not awful, it was just bland and boring. But at the very least, it was not dry. Next up was Chick-Fil-A. I normally like Chick-Fil-A and I had some good hopes for it. Things were going well until they weren't because it was Sunday and Chick-Fil-A is closed on Sundays. This is due to the owner's religious faith, which means God has officially interfered with the Juiciest meat competition. We continued pushing on and we figured that we would probably one day go back to Chick-Fil-A on our own on a day when it's open to give it our final ratings. Ratings that will most likely not be included in this video, but instead maybe in a pinned comment, assuming it finally does happen. Next was Popeyes. After some really boring chicken and then no chicken at all, Popeyes had a bit more pressure on it than need be. That said, we were not disappointed. I thoroughly enjoyed Popeyes tender. It was crunchy, it had good taste, the chicken was not dry by any means. It was just what I needed after the last 2 places. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5. I just liked it that much, and I felt that it could hold itself properly. That said, the group somewhat agreed with me, as our scores averaged out to 3.6. As of now, that was technically the highest group score so far though. And lastly, we close with Humble Bird. After a long day of chicken tender eating with some disappointments, we were all ready to finally finish the competition. Now, I was told that Humble Bird is most likely not a franchise. If it is, it's very small. So you most likely will not be too familiar with it, unless you're familiar with the area it is, which is North Hollywood. Just to disclose, I don't actually live in NoHo, I thankfully live in the middle of Burbank. So we went inside and got an order of the Nashville Nugs, which was more fitting for the competition as they didn't quite have tenders. While we were waiting, I played more Skyblock 3DS and did some more work on my island. Keep in mind, there were 6 of us, and the workers there were very confused as to why 6 people were ordering 1 order of nuggets. When they handed me the plate, they said the food is very hot, be careful. We went outside to eat, and I still burned my mouth as I just completely blanked out on their warning. That said, the Humble Bird Nashville Nugs were the best chicken I tasted throughout the entire day. I will say that hands down. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. They're almost a 5 out of 5. The taste was great, there was a good crunch to it as well. It did not need to rely on any sauce to keep itself afloat. It was chicken that stood strong all on its own. I feel it does make some sense, as the other places were all fast food, yet Humble Bird is most likely its own location and it's just some hole-in-the-wall place. That said, for me, it was some really amazing chicken. The group agreed more or less, and our score averaged out to 4.25. All in all, it was a long but fun day, and it stemmed from a joke question that my friend group came up with, which was, what if we all became food reviewers and reviewed food in our cars? As to how that question came to be, and as to how that stemmed into the loveliest Juiciest Meat competition, don't ask me as I don't know, but it still happened. So now you're probably thinking, well Spence, won't that mean Humble Bird has the juiciest meat of all time? No, because the juiciest meat was really at the gay bar next to it.
Sayonara, sucker.